It was early evening when I walked toward the train station. The sky was turning soft pink and orange, and the air felt warm but calm. People around me moved quickly, some talking on their phones, some hurrying home after work. I had finished my day and felt a quiet sense of peace inside. There was no need to rush, I had time. At the station, everything looked golden in the evening light. The glass roof reflected the colors of the sunset, and I could hear the soft sound of footsteps and wheels rolling on the floor. A distant announcement echoed through the hall, a familiar voice saying that my train would depart in 10 minutes. I smiled, bought a cup of hot tea, and walked slowly toward the platform. When the train arrived, I stepped inside and found a window seat. It was almost empty, only a few passengers scattered through the carriage. Someone was reading a book, a young man was listening to music with his eyes closed. Everything felt calm, as if time had slowed down for a while. I placed my bag beside me and looked out the window. Outside, the city lights were beginning to glow, tiny stars on the streets below. Cars moved like silver lines, and tall buildings reflected the last colors of the sunset. The train started to move, slowly at first, then faster, until the city began to drift away. As we left the station, a soft melody began to play through my headphones. It was slow piano music, peaceful and emotional. I leaned against the window and watched how the light faded, turning from gold to blue. In the reflection, I saw my own face, a little tired, but calm, thoughtful. The train passed small neighborhoods, each one with its own quiet story. In some windows, warm yellow light glowed. In others, shadows moved behind curtains. I imagined people cooking dinner, watching television, talking to their families. It felt nice to think about life happening everywhere. Simple, ordinary, but beautiful. After a while, the city disappeared completely, and the view changed. Now there were fields, trees, and faraway lights from small towns. The sky was darker, and I could see the first stars appear. I sipped my tea. It was still warm, and the smell of it mixed with the sound of the train, that soft rhythmic sound, clack, 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 always made me calm. Sometimes I travel by train just to think there is something special about watching the world move outside the window. You are moving, but also resting. You are alone, but not lonely. It's like time gives you a small pause to breathe and reflect. I thought about my day. There had been many small things, conversations, emails, plans, noise. Now all of that felt far away, almost unreal. The train was like a small world between two moments, between work and home, between day and night. I loved that feeling. The music continued, slow and beautiful. I looked out and saw a lake reflecting the last light of the sunset. It looked like glass, and the wind made small waves across its surface. There were trees along the edge, dark silhouettes against the sky. It was one of those quiet scenes that stay in your memory. As we passed the lake, I remembered another evening long ago. It was summer, and I was traveling with friends. We had laughed, taken pictures, shared snacks, and talked for hours. Now thinking about it, I smiled softly. Life had changed since then, but the feeling of travel, that mix of peace and curiosity, was still the same. I took my notebook out of my bag. Sometimes I like to write while I travel, small thoughts, memories, or just sentences that come to mind. The movement of the train always gives rhythm to writing. I wrote about the light, the sound, the people, the calm. Words came easily. After some time, I stopped writing and just watched again. The train was crossing a bridge. Below, I could see water reflecting thousands of city lights, orange, white, and red dots moving gently. In that moment, I felt a wave of gratitude for the quiet, for the evening, for being alive and present. The train continued to move through the quiet evening. The sky outside had turned a deep blue now, and a silver moon was slowly rising above the dark line of the forest. Its light touched the tops of the trees and made them shimmer for a second before they disappeared behind the next hill. Inside the train, everything was peaceful. The soft sound of the wheels and the quiet music created a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Some people were reading, others looked half asleep. A woman near the window was knitting, her hands moving slowly and calmly across the aisle. A man typed something on his laptop, his face serious, but relaxed. I love this kind of silence. Not empty, but full of small, gentle sounds. The hum of the train, the turning of a page, the click of a keyboard. It was the sound of people living their quiet moments. I leaned my head against the window. It felt cool and smooth. Outside, I could see lights from distant villages. They looked like tiny golden dots scattered in the dark. Sometimes they disappeared, and there was only blackness and the faint reflection of my face. Other times the train passed through towns and bright lights filled the carriage for a few seconds. Shops, cafes, street lamps, people walking quickly under umbrellas. There was something magical about watching life through a train window. You don't stop anywhere but for a few seconds. You're part of many different worlds. Every window, every light tells a story, and then it fades away as the train moves forward. I finished my tea and placed the empty cup on the small table. The warmth was still in my hands. I smiled, remembering how often I had traveled like this before. Late trains after work or quiet Sunday rides with no destination, just to see the countryside and think. As the train slowed down near a small station, a few passengers got off. A cool breeze entered through the open doors, carrying the smell of rain and fresh air. The platform lights reflected on the wet ground. It must have rained earlier. Everything outside glistened softly like glass. When the train started again, I noticed my reflection in the window more clearly. The moonlight touched my face, and I thought how peaceful this evening felt. Sometimes we all need such moments. Not exciting, not loud, just simple and quiet. Moments that let the mind rest. I thought about my plans for tomorrow, about small things I wanted to do. Maybe cook something new, call a friend, or finish a book. It felt good to think about ordinary things. They give life its gentle rhythm. A few seats away, someone was listening to music too. I could hear the soft beat faintly through their headphones. It blended with my own melody, and together it made a calm, endless sound that fit the movement of the train perfectly. Then the lights inside dimmed a little, and the atmosphere became even softer. Some passengers closed their eyes. Outside, the stars were bright now, small and steady above the fields. We passed a large meadow, and I could see fireflies glowing near the grass. Small lights moving slowly in the dark. It looked almost like magic. For a moment, I thought about how many evenings I had missed by staying busy, working, rushing somewhere. But tonight, I was here, watching, listening, feeling. And that was enough. The train's voice, that steady, gentle clack-clack, became almost hypnotic. It made me think of stories I used to read as a child, where long train rides always led to something new and mysterious. But this journey was not about arriving somewhere new. It was about enjoying the way itself. I took out my phone and looked at the time, almost 9 o'clock. The trip was nearly over. I felt a little sad. Part of me wanted the ride to last longer. It was one of those evenings when everything feels balanced. Not too bright, not too dark, not too fast. Just right. When the announcement for my stop came, I slowly gathered my things. My teacup, notebook, and headphones went into my bag. The train began to slow down. Outside, the familiar buildings of my town appeared, softly lit by street lamps. I could see the small cafe near the station, still open, with a few people inside. The train stopped with a quiet sigh. I stood up, took one last look at the empty seat, and stepped onto the platform. The air was cool and smelled faintly of rain and metal. I could still hear the music in my ears and the rhythm of the wheels in my memory. As the train left again, disappearing into the night, I watched its red lights fade in the distance. Then I turned toward home. The city was calm, the streets wet and shining, and I walked slowly, feeling light and peaceful. It had been just an ordinary evening. But somehow, it felt special.